My name is Tanya Adams. I'm known as Coach T around the world, and I specialize in helping women thrive in all their spaces in their lives, whether that's in business, whether that's in their relationships, as a parent, and most importantly, in their relationships with themselves. And I'm going to be talking to you today about a couple of the reasons why you might find yourself feeling that you are still playing small and you're stuck. And I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to shift that stuckness and how to do things differently. There's a couple of reasons why, which we'll go through, but I think we'll all agree that generally speaking, there's not a single one of us who wakes up in the morning and goes, I know what I'm going to do today. I am going to be invisible. We all wake up in the morning excited for the day, ready to take on the world. And most of the time, I know for me, there's a list of things that I intend to conquer for the day. And there are many days where at the end of the day, we can sit down and go, oh my hat, what did I really accomplish, and have I moved the needle? And this is especially true for those of us who are in our own businesses, for female entrepreneurs, though it's true also for people in business, generally speaking, that there's often a mismatch between what you intend to do in the morning and at the end of the day, if you do an assessment, what actually happened. In fact, sometimes it gets quite chronic in as much as we avoid the end of the day analysis because we don't want to really acknowledge the truth of what we've done or not done throughout the day. So a couple of things that fuel this. One of the things that I find that fuels this is often we've outgrown our identities. So we are growing all the time. Human beings are constantly growing and evolving. It's what we were designed and put on this planet to do. And sometimes we get stuck in a mindset of an old identity. What does that look like practically? In practical terms, what that may look like is that you are running a story in your mind about having too little time, too little resources, or that's just not who I am. So we start a new business, there's a whole lot of new things that need to be done. There's new demands on your time, there's new ways of showing up. And inside ourselves, there's this identity that's saying, but that's not how I operate. That's not who I am. That's not how I've never done it like that. And this is typical because our identity is ingrained in us inside our brains. Our identity is not a mysterious thing. It's a set of neural networks in our brains that informs us who we are, how the world works, how we're designed to show up, how we should respond to things. And over many years, the brain puts this in place as a tool set to save you time and energy. So it's natural that the brain is going to want to stay in its comfortable zone. In personal development parlance, that's known as the comfort zone, though it is an actual real hard part of your brain. There is a part of your brain that is used to running on those networks. I often liken it to a path on a grass field. The more that path gets walked, the easier it is to walk on it. So our brains function the same way. So the minute we step into something new or something unfamiliar or something that is not really predictable for our brains, then the brain says, no, that's not, you're on the wrong path. And this is a mistake. We are now on the right path, though the brain keeps defaulting and sending us signals that says you're on the wrong path. I'm sure that many of you listening today have had that experience where you've sat and gone, this feels really hard. I wonder if this is for me. We know from the science of neuroplasticity that everything is for you if you choose into it to do the work to rebuild neural networks and to overcome what's happening ordinarily in your brain. Everything is possible for all of us because our brains are innately intelligent and constantly seek to grow if we're willing to put them under pressure and go under the discomfort of doing the work. So the first issue that we come across when we are building a business or stepping into a version of ourselves that we've never been before, which anybody who starts a business, that is really why you've started your business, is you want a different outcome. It's normal, and expect that there's going to be this pushback that comes from inside you. Even if you have been running your own business for a long time, there will be stages where you are invited by the business, by circumstances, by the economy, by any number of things to change who you are. And this is often an even more uncomfortable place for people to play in, largely because the story that comes up is, I know how to do this. This is how we've always done the business. And the landscape is changing, and I don't want it to change. I don't want it to be like that. I'm sure that sounds familiar for anybody who's on here. So our brains naturally are going to keep us playing safe. They want to protect us. So that's one reason why you might find that you're stuck, is simply because your hardware is working really hard to protect you. The second reason that you might find that you are stuck, I encounter this quite a lot with people who've approached me and want to get unstuck, is that they are very busy. I've spoken about this quite a lot, is the busyness disease. And the busyness disease is very often driven by a type of avoidance. You might be spending a lot of time doing things that ticks the dopamine box. So the more that we do things, the brain likes to complete things. Every time something's completed, there's this little dopamine hit, which makes us feel super confident and super good about things. Though this is problematic as an entrepreneur when the boxes that you are ticking are not needle moving boxes. And I've been in this space, and I'm sure that it resonates with many of you, to have been in a space where you are busy being busy. It might be creating endless amounts of social media posts. It might be engaging on social media, driving the algorithm through engagement. It might be stories that you tell yourself about all the things that have to be done before you can settle. I have to get the grocery shopping ordered. I have to pack the dishwasher before I can sit down and settle myself. Oh wait, the washing needs to be hung up before I can make the phone calls that I need to move the needle. And again, this is an attempt by our brains to avoid, it's a kind of a trick, if you like, of the brain to throw things in our way to distract us from this uncomfortable zone. And so you might be being busy to avoid things. The other problem that you might have is that you might be thinking that if I do a lot, that's going to make me worth more. So proving your worth through doing more. And I see this often more in a business context than necessarily in an entrepreneur's context. Though how this shows up in an entrepreneur's context is that entrepreneurs tend to be less likely and less willing to delegate, and less likely and less willing to get people to help them. And this is part of the whole idea of earning your worth through being busy. Where does this come from? Well, we have come through a schooling system where as long as you are doing the things, you're going to get some kind of an acknowledgement or a naughty badge. In fact, throughout schooling has changed to some degree, though throughout my schooling years, collaboration in projects was frowned upon. In fact, asking somebody to help you with your homework was probably going to get you a black mark or get you a 0 on your homework, which is completely contrary to effective work. And then we get sent out into the workplace to say, oh, well, now you must work in a team. And now all of you must collaborate on the outcome and the vision of the company, where we've been trained from small people that you're going to literally get into trouble if you do that. So many of us keep ourselves on the busy treadmill because we have this old ingrained story that the more that I'm doing, the more valuable I am. And the truth of the matter is that it's not about how much you are doing that makes you valuable. It's about what the effect and impact of what you're doing is, whether you are valuable to the outcome. And it's not even about valuable as a person. We often get tied up in my value as a human being is tied to how busy I am or how much I'm doing. And really, it's a mindset shift to say it's not my value as a human being. What is the value I'm adding to the outcome, to the goal of my own personal goals, or to the goal of the organization or the team? And this leads me to the third reason why people, I find, are often stuck, is that their primary come from is to build their world around meeting other people's needs. And this for me is probably the most pervasive aspect of what keeps people stuck, is giving away their power to other people's needs. It's the idea that I've got to put everybody else before me. I'm not allowed to take time for my exercise, for my skincare, for my business, for my learning and development. And people pleasing is what it's known in sort of pop psychology, though it is a real disease, actually. And why it starts is a couple of complicated reasons. One is very often we're raised to subjugate our own needs to other people's needs. And we hear the message from as small children, we hear the message, can you please stop asking for XYZ, mommy's tired, or please stop doing that because XYZ needs this more. And so we are verbally and subtly and both subconsciously and consciously given the message that your needs are less important than someone else's needs. So we internalize that and use that as it becomes our way of being. The other thing that happens is, depending on how we've been raised, is that there is often real covert requirements on people to hide their own needs, particularly if you've come from a very strict background where anytime that you showed emotion or you showed discomfort or you asked for your own needs to be met, that need was often met with anger or with some form of reaction that you learned that it's best to just keep the peace. And many people grow up in environments where they learn this behavior of, let me just make sure everybody else is okay, because it feels safer and more comfortable for me if I am managing everybody else's maneuvers. And between these three things, I'm sure that anybody who's listening to this right now is going to see themselves in any one of these places. I know for me, my default, if I get stressed, it becomes, if I just think hard enough about all of this, if I think, then it'll all feel better. My default is into cognition. Other people's default is into busyness. Other people's default is into starting to faff and fiddle around with, what do you need? Going to family members in a different room, are you okay? Can I make you a cup of tea? Where that person is quite comfortable sitting there by themselves, though we distract ourselves, and it's all done in service of trying to avoid that sense of discomfort that is inviting us to step into a place of being somebody we've not been before and doing things that we've done before and not done before. And again, it's a hardware issue. At the end of the day, it's a hardware issue. The brain has to use more resources to build more neural networks. That's the one piece. And the second piece is the brain really likes predictability. And the minute that you step into anything that it cannot predict the outcome, it is going to give you a backlash, and it's going to trigger that default behavior of yours, which is either going to be overthinking or over busyness or people pleasing. And it's going to trigger whatever it can in order to get you out of what it perceives to be a dangerous, energy draining situation. So if this resonates with you, put some comments in or send some love right now, because I know that, having worked with so many people over the years, this is exactly what happens to people. So what are you to do with it? Well, the first thing that you want to look at is moving from hustle culture to an alignment culture. And unfortunately, in a lot of social media as well, the idea of the hustle culture is perpetuated. There's a lot on social media about the fact that entrepreneurs, you're never going to be successful if you're not grinding it out day in, day out. If you're not working 12 to 16-hour days, how can you ever expect to take over the world? And frankly, it's rubbish. It doesn't have to be that way. So the first thing to do is to unsubscribe to all of those. If you are following any form of social media or YouTube channel or podcast that is telling you that you have got to sacrifice life and body and soul and your family and all the rest of it, then unsubscribe. If you are on any channel that's telling you that, unsubscribe. It is completely untrue. There is enough time in 24 hours to get done every single needle moving activity any entrepreneur needs to get done. And more than that, there's enough time for them to do that and attend to their children and attend to their own personal needs. 24 hours is a long time, provided you are unsubscribing from the hustle culture and you are subscribing to the aligned action culture. It takes a decision. It takes understanding what are those aligned behaviors that will get you the results. Now, 20% of what you are currently doing in your day will get you 80% of your results. For the most part, if you're an entrepreneur, the biggest things that you need to be doing are generating leads, creating appointments, presenting your opportunity, and then closing a sale. They call that laps. Then the amount of laps that you do in a day is going to determine your outcome. That's all that you need to do. All the rest of it is support work that perhaps other people can do, or you can find different ways to do it. You can automate it. You can use AI tools. Though the first step is make a decision that you're no longer going to sacrifice your life, body, and soul for this, that you're unsubscribing to the hustle culture and subscribing to the aligned action culture, and start to look for what activities in your business are going to create the greatest result. 100% of the time, those activities are centered around communicating to other human beings about what you have on offer and having presenting it to them in some way, and then inviting them into that solution, whatever that is. Whether you're offering a business opportunity, whether you're offering a product, it doesn't matter. Those are the needle moving activities. And so when we focus on that, you start to claim back time. If you are looking at parenting, there are certain things that will give you much more value as a parent and which will add value to your children than being busy around them. 20 minutes of sitting with a child and listening to them tell you about their day and their struggles is far more effective for the long term than nagging and hassling them about their tables. The connection that you build for just 20 minutes of listening to a child telling you their news from the day and really being curious and interested in how did they handle that? What do they need? What support do they need? Do they need your support, or do they just want to vent? If you think about growing up, if you had had 20 minutes a day with either one of your parents where they listened deeply and sought to know who you were, who do you think you would be today? Versus if they took that 20 minutes to hassle you about your homework. Generally speaking, most kids are quite well managed by the school discipline system and are scared enough of getting into trouble that they're going to do pretty much most of what they need to do for school. What they don't get enough of is that little bit of you seeing them. So get out of hustle, get into alignment. What is aligned? And to discover what's aligned, you have to know where you're going. So you have to have a goal, you have to have an outcome, you have to know what it is that you want to create, whether it's created as a parent, as a wife, as a husband, as an entrepreneur, as a member of your church, as a member of your community. What do you want? What is that identity and what is that outcome? And then start to reflect on what are the actual actions and behaviors that will give you that. And when you start to do this exercise, you will be surprised at how little work it takes to actually get that really big outcome. The second thing that I would encourage every one of you to do is to put down the hammer. When things feel uncomfortable or the results aren't necessarily 100% aligned with what we said we wanted to achieve, the very first place many of us go to is self-criticism. In fact, if you are any form of a high-performing person in any sphere of your life, you have probably got a very big hammer. I meet a lot of my clients who say, if it wasn't for the hammer, I would not move forward. And I disagree. They have become used to utilizing the hammer. Though the question I want them to engage with, and I'm going to ask you to engage with, is what would you say to your best friend in that moment where the sale didn't happen, where you lost a customer, where it went wrong, where you missed your milestone? What would you say to the person you love the most, whether that's your child, your best friend, or your husband? That is what you need to hear. And I often talk to people about the fact that your one job is to actually look after and nurture the inside you. That inside you is the one that's making all the difference in the world. That inside you is the one who's capable of loving your children and your husband and making a difference in your teams. And so the more that you can nurture that inside you and offer compassion, forgiveness, without excusing. It's never about saying, oh, shame, well, it's too bad. It's about going, well, that's okay. This is the facticity is we missed the goal. What needs to happen next time? Let's leave that in the past. Compassion is not about letting people off the hook. It's about saying, this is the past, and the past is not changeable. No matter how much hammering we do, the past will not change. We have power over the future. So let's leave that in the past. Let's not obsess and worry about it. Let's go, okay, well, what can we do differently tomorrow? Which takes me back to my first point about aligned action. What aligned action can I take tomorrow to get it done? And the third shift is, honestly, is to stop trying to be a lone ranger. You do not have to be out there with your cape by yourself. This business, and I don't care what business you are in, is about people. It's about teams. You are not in this alone. In your family, you are not in it alone. The hardest thing for most high-performing people to do is to ask for help. It's to say, can we do this together? Can you help me with this? And I find this theme across, if I talk to high-performing people, they are doing this Lone Ranger thing everywhere. They have self-appointed themselves the entire home manager. They are self-appointed the entirety of their business. They are self-appointed in their own fitness. They're often not even, it is often a hurdle for them to even engage a coach in any form. And so the biggest thing I can suggest to you is get over that, because that's just an ego rubbish. It's not true. Stop thinking that you are it. You are a piece in a puzzle of a whole lot of people who actually thrive on being part of a bigger outcome. And to the degree that you are choosing to be the lone wolf or the ultimate hero in everybody's story is to the degree that you are robbing other people of the ability to be a hero in a story. And when we all get to be heroes in all the stories, or in some stories, everybody wins. Everybody starts to operate from their full potential and isn't out there wondering where their place is in the world. Building a business is always going to be about talking to people, inviting people in, inviting people either to be a customer of yours or to be a partner in your business and somehow help you. And the more that you can get comfortable with asking for help and including people, the more your business and your life is going to feel a lot more manageable. Not only that, but put yourself into groups. Go to events where people like you hang out. Go to networking events. Go to exercise groups. Go to places where people who want the same outcome as you, but may not be directly connected to you, are doing the things. There's a couple of things that happen when you get into a group of people who are kind of going in the same direction as you, is that you learn new things. You are able to pick up hints and best practices from people who are in different industries, different avenues, though they're going in the same direction of self-empowerment and entrepreneurship. You also make a whole lot of connections, but here's the real magic. What you start to learn is that you're not out there alone. These are not unique you problems. You are not not the freak. You are not the failure. What you start to discover is that the journey of entrepreneurship, and in fact, the journey of being a human, I often say to people, humaning is the hardest thing in the world. Peopling is a really hard job. What happens when you start to associate with other support networks is that you start to be able to activate that compassion piece, because suddenly it's not just you. And it's a bit like when you suddenly go to school and you discover all the moms have exactly the same problem with their 4-year-olds. And you thought you had the only 4-year-old on the planet that had this particular issue. Turns out there's 30 of them in a class. And the same is true for you. You are not the only one that has this particular issue. And it's such a relief to discover that we're all on the journey together. So your job, what I'd love you to do after this is take a journal and just reflect. Which of these things hit home for you? Where did you see yourself? And what are you going to do differently from today, from this minute, so that you can bring yourself into alignment, so that you can settle your nervous system, and ultimately so that you can give more of the value, the unique value that you have, that the world's losing out on because you are behind the busyness and the fear and the distractions. The world needs that. So journal a little bit, figure out what aligned action looks like to you, and practice forgiveness and make today a different day to the days that you've had before. Thank you, guys. Have a happy day.